Game development is often an uphill battle, even for the most seasoned, well funded game studios. Since no game is perfect, there are bound to be hiccups throughout the production process, and inevitably, some of those hiccups find their way into the final product. At best, these missteps are few and benign, something that doesn't sully the final product. At worst, they damage a title beyond repair, infecting every aspect of the experience and rendering said experience nigh unplayable. In a way, good and bad games both have something in common: they're memorable. But then there are games that exist somewhere in the middle, the ones that don't necessarily do much wrong, but aren't good enough to stand out amongst countless other titles. This could be for a multitude of reasons. Maybe the studio doesn't have much money, maybe the team is inexperienced. In the end, it really doesn't matter. All that matters is the final product. Is it good enough for us, the consumers, to spend our hard earned money on? The Gunk is generally regarded as one of these games, developed by Image and Form and published by Thunderful Publishing for the Xbox One and Xbox Series X and S. This 2021 title could have been great, but just didn't do enough to truly wow audiences, at least according to many mainstream critics. I can certainly understand the sentiment. It's a short, somewhat clunky experience with characters that some might find grating, but despite these shortcomings, I still found a lot to like about the Gunk. Though, admittedly, I'm not the hardest person to please when it comes to games. As long as I'm having fun, I can overlook some minor negatives. Today, I'm going to be taking a look at the story, mechanics, visuals, and sound, everything that makes a game great. I'll be playing through the campaign and examining what I believe the game did well and what needed more time in the oven. So, with that out of the way, let's get started. The story centers on two broke scavengers, Ronnie and Bex. While riding along in their space jalopy the bunny, they sense a strong power source coming from a mysterious planet and decide to investigate, hoping to monetize said power source in order to pay off their various debts. Ronnie explores the planet on foot, while Bex monitors her from the ship. The first thing I noticed about this game are the visuals, which managed to strike a good balance between cartoonish and realistic. The presentation as a whole is reminiscent of an oil painting and lend the character's environment a simple, clean quality without sacrificing too much detail. Moments into the game, we're introduced to one of its major mechanics. Ronnie can use her robotic arm, affectionately named Pumpkin, to scan the local flora and fauna. I hope you enjoy holding down the right bumper because you're going to be doing it a lot. Nearly every alien, plant, animal, or mineral can be scanned and all provide information about the planet and its ecology, as well as providing experience points to upgrade your kit. But we'll get into that later. As we continue searching for the power source, its signal becomes weaker. And it's at this point that we come across an unknown substance, the titular gunk. Apparently, this strange substance is interfering with the signal. Scanning the gunk reveals little information, only that it's some sort of organic compound. For some reason, Beck suggests cleaning it up. We're now introduced to the game's second major mechanic. Using Pumpkin, we can vacuum up infinite amounts of organic and inorganic matter. The mechanic is satisfying, almost cathartic, both in a visual and gameplay sense. And this is aided by good sound design, especially when it comes to cleaning up the gunk. Hearing it bubble and gurgle as it's sucked inside Pumpkin, it never gets old. But the entire process leaves me with a question. Where exactly do all the vacuumed items go? The game never gives us an answer. My guess is they're stored in some alternate dimension beyond time and space with no beginning or end, inhabited by an ancient race of giant, ultra advanced tardigrade like creatures. Or the developers didn't bother coming up with an explanation. That seems more likely. Clearing out the gunk revitalizes the landscape it once inhabited, suggesting that this substance is hazardous in nature, sucking the life out of any organic matter it comes in contact with. We also discover a pool of what appears to be liquid energy. This energy shares a similar signal to the power source we're pursuing, only weaker. Bex informs us that it's potentially valuable, provided we can find a big enough deposit, but that can wait. For now, we'll focus on finding a place to land the ship. Along the way, we get to know our main protagonist a little better. Ronnie is the plucky, head in the clouds, do gooder type with big dreams and shallow pockets. The type of character synonymous with these cutesy, Pixar esque adventure type stories. Bex, on the other hand, is more grounded in reality and is mainly concerned with paying off the massive debts she and Ronnie have accumulated over the course of their friendship. She is perpetually serious, almost to the point of absurdity, and as irritating as it can be as an adult who has his own bills to pay, I've found myself relating to her far more than Ronnie. The two bicker constantly, and it gets annoying at times, but it lends a sense of realism to their interactions. They're presented as two people who have known each other for a long time, and that comes across in every line of dialogue. Besides, they get along more often than not, and what's a story without a little conflict between the leads? I'd call it boring, but that's just me. After degunking a suitable landing zone, Ronnie and Beck set up base camp. Here, we're introduced to their robot assistant, Kurt, and get our first look at Bex, who's rocking the footwear equivalent of scabies. I mean, seriously, how were Crocs ever a thing? Anyway, she suggests we go clean up some more gunk while she looks after the ship and continues scanning for the energy signal. After scanning another alien object, we unlock the first of several character upgrades, the hydraulic braces, which are essentially an improved sprint. But since the speed and movement are already fine, feel free to skip it and save your resources for other, more useful upgrades. We also unlock the glove grip soldering, which is essential to progress in the game as it allows us to pick up, carry, and throw objects. So that's what we're going with. After gathering sufficient resources to upgrade Pumpkin, we pick up an alien plant seed and fling it into one of those glowing pods of energy from earlier, which causes rapid growth in plant life. This trick is used on numerous occasions throughout the game, mainly for the purposes of traversal. As with cleaning up the gunk, there's something innately satisfying about watching massive plants and fungi spring from the proverbial ether to help me on my way. With a new way to get around, we continue our search for the source of the mysterious signal. Eventually, we come across our first alien life form, this feathered bird deer thing, which I've decided to name Carl. Ronnie is instantly enraptured by Carl's sheer awesomeness, so much so that the neighboring gunk gets jealous and starts spawning enemies. This thrusts us into our first combat encounter. At this stage in the game, fighting is a simple affair. Suck up enemies with pumpkin, toss them away, then clean up the gunk that's spitting them out. Rinse and repeat. For now, that's all we need to know to stay alive. Later on, new enemy variations start popping up, requiring different strategies to defeat, but none of them are particularly fun or difficult to handle. This is my first major gripe about the game. Exploration and puzzle solving are fun, as is clearing up the gunk. The combat kind of interferes with that. It's a distraction at best and an annoyance at worst. But since these sections are so short and far between, they can be easily overlooked. After dispatching the local fauna, we get chastised by Bex for no particular reason, then press forward, clearing gunk and scanning crap along the way. All the while, we're tracking our new best friend Carl through the wilderness. Not for any particular reason, Ronnie just wants to look at him. When we finally catch up with him, he's trapped in a gunk infested area and being accosted by enemies, and it's up to us to save him. I know this sounds pretty bad, but on the bright side, the gunk interferes with radio transmissions, so we don't have to hear Bex's constant complaining. I'd call that a fair compromise. Once we save Carl, we go to check on him, much to Beck's chagrin. And I have to say, as much as I agree with her concerns regarding depth, you do not ignore or mistreat animals. All Fidos are good boys, even intergalactic ones. Upon catching up with Carl, we discover that he survived his brush with death and is no worse for wear. He briefly acknowledges us before scampering off into the unknown. This leads us to a startling revelation. It turns out that this uninhabited planet is not so uninhabited, indicated by a large alien statue that appears to have been carved mid vogue. Moreover, the area is littered with other pieces of alien architecture, which pose some important questions like who lived on this planet and what happened to them. For now, these questions remain unanswered. As we venture deeper into the wilderness, we come across mysterious stone tablets covered in alien writing. Scanning enough of these will hopefully give Bex enough information to eventually provide a translation and, as a result, a better understanding of the planet and its people. We also discover a massive sealed door that can only be opened by an energy pulse. Fortunately, Pumpkin can be upgraded to fire such a pulse. Pretty convenient. We fast travel back to camp to install it, but there are more pressing matters that require our immediate attention. First, we get chewed out by Bex for doing our job and following the mysterious signal, because senseless drama sells or something. Then we share a meal prepared by Chef Kurt before turning in for the evening. After a good night's sleep, we upgrade Pumpkin with a pulse cannon attachment, along with a few other improvements to expedite our janitorial endeavors, I'll say. Cleaning up the gunk, while gratifying, can at times be a slow, time consuming process, and anything that can help us achieve that gratification quicker is all right in my book. With our fancy new pulse cannon equipped, we unlock the sealed door and continue on our journey through the alien ruins. The more alien structures we encounter, the more we wonder what happened to this planet? Where are its inhabitants? This is something the Gunk does very well. It provides an intriguing mystery, then drops breadcrumbs that keep you engaged as you inch towards one discovery to the next. Throughout our adventure, the planet never ceases to lose its sense of mystery and wonder. It's really good stuff. We soon discover a large pipe filled with glowing green energy, reminiscent of the glowing pools we previously encountered. The Gunk has taken a special interest in this pipe, suggesting that it may have some degree of sentience. Oh, and apparently the Gunk can fly now. That's just wonderful. After cleansing the area, we follow the pipe, hoping it'll lead us to the source of the signal and, if we're lucky, a motherlode of valuable energy, enough to make us rich beyond our wildest dreams. I'm talking stupid rich, like using dollar bills as toilet paper rich, just set for life, my friends. Along the way, we're treated to our next tidbit of alien lore in the form of two sculptures. One resembles the humanoid alien statue we saw previously, and it's towering over a smaller alien creature. The latter seems to revere the former, presumably as some sort of authority figure or perhaps even a god. An inscription near the monument provides us with more fragments of the alien language for Bex to translate. This particular inscription mentions a flow of energy. Could it be referring to the mysterious source we're currently tracking? Time will tell. For now, we continue moving forward. Soon after, we reach a massive tower of unknown purpose, covered from top to bottom in gunk. The pipe appears to be connected to it. If we're going to continue on our journey, we have no choice but to scale this tower and employ our janitorial duties once more. This part is particularly annoying as we learn something new about the gunk. In large quantities, it has the ability to regenerate itself. This wouldn't be so bad if not for the fact that these walls of perpetually regrowing sludge occasionally cover the camera. This issue is compounded by the fact that touching the gunk hurts you, and for me, there are few things worse than falling victim to unseen threats via shoddy camera work. Fortunately, this isn't a common occurrence. We reach the top of the tower and clear the remaining gunk, at which point we reestablish contact with Bex, who is ecstatic that we're still alive. At her insistence, we continue following the pipe underground. Up until now, I've found her character to be a bit inconsistent. Sometimes she scolds us about our proclivity to putting ourselves in dangerous situations, then, in the very next breath, encourages us to put our life on the line. At times, I've found it difficult to figure her out as a character, but in a way, I kind of like it. Humanity as a whole is a walking, talking contradiction, and why shouldn't video games reflect that from time to time? We follow the pipe to another stretch of wilderness. Beck informs us that she's managed to translate more of the alien language. Apparently, the planet's inhabitants spent their days engaged in hard labor, building, farming, etc., and hated every second of it. They knew of a mysterious energy source called the Geist that would make their lives easier, but it was buried deep under the planet's surface and thus out of their reach, until someone called the Gardener made the energy flow. Because of this, the inhabitants revered the gardener as their savior. I think it's pretty safe to assume that the gardener is this godlike figure depicted in the sculptures. But if the gardener saved the people of this planet, where is everyone? Something about this feels wrong. We enter a cave system in pursuit of the pipe and must traverse it if we ever hope to find the energy source. The caves gradually transition to an alien mining facility, and once again, we lose contact with Bex. That can only mean one thing: more gunk, along with a simple platforming section. Clearing these challenges allow us to reestablish contact with Bex and resume following the pipe. We eventually reach a locked door. A quick look around reveals three switches. We pull them, assuming they'll open said door. Instead, they activate the room's ventilation system. Entering the system seems to be our only way forward. Maybe by doing so, we'll find a way past the door. After a few platforming sections and clearing out some gunk, we finally reach a control room with a switch that allows us to open the locked door. Now we can continue following the pipe. We forge ahead and reach the lower mines, where we once again lose contact with Bex and encounter a new enemy called a gunk spitter. These little guys are anchored to the ground like plants and have the ability to, you guessed it, spit balls of gunk at us. By catching its projectiles and lobbing them back at it, we can stun the gunk spitter, then use Pumpkin to rip it out of the ground. These are, at least for me, the trickiest enemies to deal with, as they're often hard to reach and have a tendency to hide just off camera and blindside you with gunk balls. They're pretty despicable, but they do add another layer of challenge to certain platforming sections, so I can see the logic behind their inclusion. After clearing out some more gunk, we reestablish contact with Bex, who's more than a little annoyed about constantly losing radio contact with us. She chastises us for dealing with the gunk rather than concentrating on the pipe. We remind her that the gunk is an obstacle that prevents us from following said pipe. Moreover, it's presumably harming the planet. Bex isn't interested in being Captain Planet and tells us to hustle up and find a way out of the mines. We eventually reach the surface and find ourselves on a cliffside overlooking a river. In the distance, we see a massive tower, the largest structure we've seen thus far. There's something dark and ominous about it. Who built it? What's its purpose? For now, those questions must remain unanswered. We have a pipe to follow. It leads us through a tunnel filled with wires and creepy red lights. At the end lies a chamber where we behold a shocking sight: a strange liquid filled pod suspended over a large shaft. It contains what appears to be an alien life form. The entire apparatus is part of a larger machine that the mysterious energy seems to be pumping through. What does this mean? Probably nothing good, especially for the alien inside. It appears to be in pain, and we, being the heroes that we are, want to free it, much to Bex's disapproval. We attempt to disconnect the pod, which causes it to descend into the shaft. It also opens a door at the opposite end of the chamber. We assume that lowering the pod to the very bottom of the shaft will allow us to free the alien inside. Armed with that theory, we go through the open door. It leads to an underground walkway encircling the shaft. Switches arranged throughout the area allow us to continue lowering the shaft. Reaching them requires us to clear several platforming sections and enemy encounters, but it's nothing we haven't faced before. Eventually, we pull the final switch, detaching the pod from the machine and sending it to the bottom of the shaft. All that's left is to liberate the alien trapped inside. But of course, that would be way too easy. Upon reaching the pod, we're attacked by a new enemy called a Gunk Beast. The fight isn't overly difficult, as the Gunk Beast isn't overly intelligent or even remotely intelligent. In fact, this might be the dumbest enemy in the entire game. All we have to do is sidestep its charge or trick it into crashing into obstacles. Then, while its back is turned, we suck up the glowing mass of gunk on its rump. Repeat until it's dead. With the gunk beast dealt with, we successfully free the alien from the pod. He tries to communicate with us, but sadly, we can't understand him. Good thing we've been scanning those alien inscriptions. Bex runs the data through the ship's computer and updates our translator. The alien reveals himself to be a native of the planet and that he's been trapped in the pod for 200 years. He also expresses deep regret over using the Geist as an energy source. Apparently, using it is destroying the planet, perhaps beyond repair. We also learn that the gardener mentioned in the alien inscriptions is still alive and continues to control the flow of Geist from somewhere called the garden. The alien then gives us a key to said garden, asking that we put a stop to the gardener's efforts. and free the other natives who are presumably being held in pods for some yet unknown purpose. Apparently, the godlike figure depicted in the statues isn't as benevolent as he appears to be. We return to camp with our new alien friend, whose name is Harry, by the way, and Bex is less than welcoming. We inform her of our plan to save the planet and its inhabitants from the gardener, and that we need the ship to speed up this plan. Naturally, Bex won't allow it, being more concerned with saving fuel than countless lives, so we're forced to hoof it to the garden. Harry stays behind with Bex and Kurt to recuperate. The key Harry provided gives us access to an abandoned city. The area appears to have been a marketplace or town hub, filled with ruined vendor stalls and collapsed roadways. Harry informs us that this was once the home of his people. In the distance, we see the mysterious tower from before, which we now know to be the garden. Apparently, Henry's people are being held there, but not against their will. He explains that the gardener convinced them to come freely, with promises of everlasting nourishment from the Geist. Harry and his people entered the pods and allowed the Geist to flow through them. This placed them in a perpetual state of comfort. By doing this, they gave up their simple way of life, abandoning their culture and traditions for an easy, stable existence, free of work, stress, and individuality. As a result, their cities crumbled from disrepair and the land began to wither, the consequences of taking the easy way out. As we continue traversing the city, Harry gives us more insight into the gunk and how it came to be. Evidently, when the Geist is harvested, the gunk is the unfortunate byproduct. It's also heavily implied that the Geist is essentially the planet's life force, and that this trait extends to the gunk. Despite the damage it causes, the gunk isn't evil. It's not intentionally harming the planet. It's simply trying to fill the environmental vacuum created by overharvesting the Geist. In a way, it's not unlike an autoimmune disorder. Pretty sad, really. After clearing the ruined city, we finally reach the garden. The structure seems to be attracting the gunk, suggesting there are massive amounts of Geist around. While taking an elevator to the top floor, we get chewed out by Bex, who accuses us of wasting time and resources on reckless heroics without even consulting her first. She thinks our main priority should be our own survival, and that it's irresponsible to concern ourselves with anyone else. We argue that there's more to life than personal gain before losing radio contact again. I consider the interruption to be a godsend, not just because I found their bickering pretty unbearable at this point, but also because it gives both parties a chance to cool their heads. Upon reaching the top of the tower, we find Henry's imprisoned countrymen and finally come face to face with the gardener himself. He recognizes us as humans and accuses our race of being intergalactic meddlers, imposing our will on the entire galaxy. When we demand him to release Henry's people, he refuses, referring to himself as their keeper rather than their jailer. In an attempt to reason with him, we tell him that the gunk is destroying the planet. But of course, he refuses to listen, claiming that we humans have destroyed our own world and have no right to tell other species how to govern theirs. He believes that the Geist is the key to the planet's future and cannot be convinced otherwise. And with that, we realize that a peaceful resolution cannot be met, and we have no choice but to fight him. This first combat encounter with the gardener is unwinnable. His force field and energy blast keep us at bay. For now, we have no choice but to make a strategic escape via a ventilation duct while the gardener vows to destroy us. We're dumped outside the tower with a damaged face mask and no radio contact. A barren wasteland stretches endlessly before us, teeming with monsters and gunk. As we wander aimlessly, we surmise that this barren desert is what will become of the entire planet if the gardener isn't stopped. An impossible task from the looks of it. Eventually, we come across a dying alien who offers us a glimmer of hope. He informs us that the Geist is the source of the gardener's power, and that severing its flow will render him vulnerable to attack. But to do that, we first have to regain access to the tower, something we can't do on our own, at least for the time being. We continue slogging through the wasteland for what feels like an eternity, growing weaker by the moment. At the end of our strength, we collapse on the edge of a cliff. All seems lost until our radio signal suddenly crackles back to life, and Bex swoops in to rescue us, proving that even she isn't above acts of reckless heroism. especially when a friend's life is on the line. We wake up safe and sound back at base camp. We make up with Bex, who informs us that she's been keeping secrets. It turns out we're even more broke than we previously thought. In fact, we're so deep in debt, we may even lose the ship if we don't come up with some money soon. Upon learning this, it's easy to see why Bex was so concerned with cash. But while searching for us, she saw the wastelands firsthand. She realizes that the entire planet is on the brink of disaster and is unwilling to sit back and let it happen, even if it means putting her financial aspirations on hold. She and her Crocs are now completely on board. It's a really heartwarming moment, I must admit. We return to the tower for one last face off with the gardener. As expected, he's still high off his previous victory and wastes no time gloating. But this time we have a game plan. We try one last time to reason with him, telling him that unless he kicks his Geist addiction, the entire planet is going to die. It goes about as well as can be expected. The ensuing fight is easily the hardest in the game, but it's not so bad in the grand scheme of video game boss battles. There are several cables connected to the gardener's back. These cables supply him with a constant flow of Geist. To defeat him, we must yank out these cables, severing the flow. But first, we have to disable his shield and energy beam. We accomplish this by pulling switches arranged throughout the arena. Once his defenses are down, we use Pumpkin to remove the cables, ending the battle. Without the Geist to nourish him, the gardener falls dead. Before expiring, he laments over the destruction of the garden. He doesn't believe the inhabitants of the planet will be able to survive on their own without the illusion of comfort and stability provided by the Geist. Even in death, he learns nothing. Still, I have to admire his commitment to his ideals, even if they are terribly misguided. Having saved the day, we release Harry's people from their pods, then assist them in rebuilding society. Contrary to the gardener's final words, his former prisoners take an active role in reclaiming their lives, relying on themselves rather than the Geist. The future looks bright for the planet and its inhabitants. And with that, our heroes leave the planet and begin the long road home. I have to say, I really liked the Gunk the first time I played it, and subsequent playthroughs have only made me appreciate it more. Sure, it has a few technical hiccups here and there, but the positives vastly outweigh the negatives. It's a relaxed, self contained adventure with good writing and some interesting mechanics. But most importantly, it's got heart. You can tell the developers love making this game as much as I love playing it. In the future, I truly hope this game gets the recognition it deserves. Having said that, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't hesitate to like and subscribe. Have a good one, and I'll see you next time.